welcome back to another episode of the Kartercast. I'm your host, Karter. Baughan. With me, as always, Dylan, Ben, Connor. NFL today. We did our college football previews. We've got more college football stuff coming all season long. Make sure to check out all the previews, SEC, ACC, Big 12, Big 10. Check those out. Great episodes. We have NFL today. NFL, AFC North, and then coming up later, AFC South on the next episode. And we're going to be doing division previews all August long, so it's going to be great. Let's start off SeatGeek. Download the SeatGeek app. Go to SeatGeek.com. Use code KarterCast for $20 off your first purchase. $50 minimum purchase required. Terms and conditions do apply. Go to SeatGeek.com for your next event. Use code KarterCast for $20 off. Dylan.
Can I say why do you assume that I always have something to say about SeatGeek?
Yeah, you just look
excited. You just automatically kick it to me.
I think SeatGeek tickles you a little bit, so you get excited.
I do. I get excited about SeatGeek. Use SeatGeek. 21 Pilots fans out there, the Clancy Tour kicked off yesterday. Use SeatGeek to get my tickets. Denver, Colorado. Drove there yesterday. Drove back overnight. And look, I'm back in Ohio here to give the people what they want. NFL preview along with Connor, Ben, and Karter. Very pumped. SeatGeek, code KarterCast.
Dedication.
Yeah, there we go. AFC North today. Like I said before, AFC North. That's why you clicked on the episode once again. This division, some are saying the best division in football. Some are saying it might not be as great. Overall, Dylan, is this the best division in football?
I would say you could make a case for it. Immediately, I think of, this might be the best division in football now that I think about it. I was going through the West, and I was like, no, those aren't, like, in the AFC North, the bottom is there. Like, the bottom is what? 8.5 wins? You think of AFC West, it's like you got the Chiefs, one of the best teams, but the bottom, like, Raiders type deal isn't great. And the Broncos are going to be awful. And then NFC West, like, you have the 49ers, but are the Rams going to be that good? Are the Cardinals going to be that good? We might look back on this and say NFC West was the best this year. But as of right now, AFC North probably is.
Yeah,
or
as
AFC
of now,
South.
I think so too, Ben.
Well,
I was going to say, I think so, especially because Dylan said the bottom, like the floor is high in this division. One other that hasn't been mentioned is, like, honestly, I was looking NFC North as, like, another option. But with the Vikings, with the injuries and issues there, I think they could end up being worse than the worst team in the AFC North. So, yeah, I kind of have to agree with AFC North, but I think NFC North was kind of, like, right there.
AFC East, anybody? Dolphins, Bills, Jets,
Patriots,
and then you look at the Patriots, and it falls apart.
Well, I don't know about that. We'll get to that in the AFC East preview, but I have some takes that are going to rile some people up for the AFC East.
It'll rile me up.
I think. Remember you're gonna go back on the Patriots bandwagon. We'll get to that. That's the AFC. East preview. That's why you tune into that. All right, let's do it. Let's start off top of the division. Ravens are the favorite at plus 145 in the AFC North. Their win total's 10.5 wins. They bring in Derrick Henry. They lose their defensive coordinator. Look, Baltimore, they're almost a surefire bet to win 10-plus games every season. There's a reason they're at the top of this division. I'll start with you, Connor. What are your thoughts about the Ravens? Are we going to see a drop-off? Is there a reason they should be the favorite? What do you think about the Ravens?
Well, real quick before I get into the Ravens, thank you guys for having me back on. I gave you guys a break last week on the SEC preview show. At the end of the year, we're going to look back at these episodes and be like, wow, every single take Connor had was spot on. So I wanted to give you guys a chance to shine, So thanks for having me back on for the NFL. Ravens, I'm going to do a little victory lap. Last year, Dylan, you can join me on this. We can hold hands if you want. Last year, Todd Monken, I was high on him, offense coordinator, tailoring that offense to Lamar, and Lamar won MVP, lo and behold. So victory lap, pat on the back there. This year, like you said, Karter, add Derrick Henry, lose J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, OBJ, Clowney. Like, the team's going to look a lot different from, like, household notable names. They have the fourth toughest schedule this year. So that's a problem as well. You do good, next year you play the hard teams. That's just how the NFL works. They were number one in scoring defense last year. A lot of that's back. Andrews missed 7 games last year. Mark Andrews is out 7 games. That's Lamar's clear favorite target. O-line has questions. 3 starters gone last year from a group that led the NFL in rush yards and had the second most rushing touchdowns. I'm kind of lukewarm on the Ravens. I'm not going to go out and say they're going to win 13 games, but 10.5 is a good number. It's pretty heavily juiced. I would lean over 10.5 just because of that returning production. I like the moves they made in free agency. Yes, they lost some people, but some of that might be addition by subtraction. We can leave that up for debate.
Who?
Oh, nobody. Just somebody down in Miami playing slot receiver, or J.K. Dobbins, who played 2 games over 5 years. Yeah, I don't know. I like the Ravens. I'm lukewarm. I don't think they're the best team in the division, though. I will say that.
So
Go ahead, Dylan.
we had this conversation before we started recording. When you think about divisional games, obviously that's a situation where I think upsets are more likely. You know the teams within your division. So as a rule of thumb for this division, I just kind of assumed that every team in this division would go 3-3 in the divisional games. Connor or anybody who wants to chime in, does that apply to the Ravens here? I think it 100% does.
I think this division, that rule especially applies to this division, because you can just see a scenario where, although you think the Ravens are way better than the Steelers, they're playing at Heinz Field in the first weekend of December. It's like 30 degrees, and Mike Tomlin always wins that game for no reason. So,
yeah, I'm with you there. I think that rule only applies to this division, to be honest. Maybe the NFC North, but we can get into that in that preview. But I think that's a good rule in this division. There's no rhyme or reason to who wins these divisional matchups in the AFC North. So I agree with you there. Connor, talking about the Ravens, I'm also lukewarm on them for many of the reasons you pointed out. Like, do we know Derrick Henry is going to be healthy and be this elite running back again? Mm-hmm. Also, they do have some, like, the Ravens' offensive line did shift dramatically. Whether that improves remains to be seen. But I'm a little lukewarm on the Ravens too, and they have a brutal schedule. Obviously everybody in this division played the same 13, 14 games roughly, but then those other divisional games, they got to play. Let me see here. I wrote this down. We wrote this down here. They play, I believe, the Bills, Bucks, and Texans. They're 3 other games. Those are hard games. Those are hard. Those are brutal. I mean, the Bucks, they'll win. Yeah. They'll win the Bucks. The Bucks stink.
You mentioned the O-line real quick before I let you guys go. Yes, there's question marks there. Like I said, 3 starters gone. It's going to be a better O-line than the Titans had. Titans were dead last in rush yards before first contact the last 2 years.
Wait a second. Whoa,
Derrick Henry was getting popped in the backfield the last 2 years. Yeah, we're not trashing the Titans.
Why are you talking about the Titans?
He thought he just said it for no reason.
Flared up.
Why are you trashing on the Titans? That's not the right division.
Derrick Henry production, come on. But he did. He would get popped in the backfield time after time, every first down, run up the middle, Derrick Henry. This Ravens O-line, even if it's not what it was last year, it'll be miles better than the Titans O-line. So that's why I'm a little bit confident on him to have a pretty good productive season.
Like, I just wish we would have gotten Derrick Henry in Baltimore 2 years ago. Like, why did he have to waste 2 years behind that crappy Titans offensive line?
Not about the Titans, but I wish they would have just traded him at the deadline. I don't know why you keep him. I guess give him the farewell tour, but I hear what you're saying. And, I mean, he could have been a huge asset for that Ravens team last year at the end of the season. So makes no sense to me, but...
The question I have with Baltimore, though, is I really don't care or question them in the regular season. It's turned into an NBA thing where we saw the Celtics. They could never get over that championship hump. Are they ever going to get there? Can Jason Tatum and those guys win a title, actually? Lamar's entered that conversation where, look, he's a great regular season bet. They're going to win 10-plus games probably. They're very well coached. I just have questions whether he can step up in the passing game and step up in playoff games and not, quote-unquote, choke in playoff games. That's the question. I think it's an overall Super Bowl-if question with the Ravens. Like, I think they're going to win 10, 11 games. That feels right. But it's more so if you're a Ravens fan, all you're thinking about is, can Lamar throw the ball in the playoffs?
Well, they've hit that plateau like Penn State. Real quick, it's almost like Penn State, where it's like you're going to win 10 games. Like most people would be like, that's successful, but now that's the standard. So they want to see you, fans want to see you excel even more. Expectations are higher. It's kind of the same thing with the Ravens. It's like, you guys are exciting regular season, Lamar MVP. Can you win the big one?
Yeah, no, agreed 100%. Especially because you look back at it, like I think we get some recency bias with the playoffs, and you have to like remember earlier on what you thought during the season. And at least in my opinion, the Baltimore Ravens over the course of the regular season were undoubtedly the best team in the NFL. That's my opinion. Like people forget how good that team was. They destroyed the 49ers. They destroyed the Lions. Like embarrassed both of those teams in ways in which they hadn't been all season. And so I also have questions about the offensive line. I think my biggest question, though, is I think an underrated loss is Jadeveon Clowney. He was really good for them. Odell Beckham was OBJ was helpful too. I still think that this is a well-balanced team, especially you got guys like Kyle Van Noy back. That defense is nasty. That's still there. They have to replace Mike McDonald, but I think the production will still be there. On the offensive side, the offensive line has a lot of turnover, but you still have Lamar Jackson. You still have Derrick Henry. Mark Andrews is back. I think the passing game offensively is interesting to me. Like, how are they going to utilize all their pass catchers? They didn't really use Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely together at all last year.
They should.
Can they? Because, honestly, positional, overlap or not, those are two of your 4 best receivers. So I would like to see Todd Monken use them both. I'm also a massive fan of Todd Monken. I think he's a fantastic offensive coordinator. So I do really like the Ravens, and I know what I'm getting from them. I think the question, though, is how they do in the playoffs.
The other thing going off that, obviously you can love the offensive coordinator and whatnot. People keep going on and on and on about, McDonald, he was this great defensive coordinator. Seattle's going to be a sneaky bet this year to, surprise a lot of people. How much stock do we put in a new DC coming into the Ravens? Or is it this is Harbaugh's thing, I'm not worried?
Just a little bit, just because, a tiny bit. Just a little bit, just because whenever you mess with a coordinator or whenever there's some change there, you at least have to consider it. But the Ravens just have dudes on that defense. Mm-hmm. So I think you can just, as long as you have a competent defensive coordinator sliding in, which I think the Ravens do, I think they're fine. Yeah. I think they're fine. I'm not sure if this defense is last year's level, but it's 90+% of it, and I think that's good enough.
Yeah.
I want to bring up something. We've talked about playoffs and Lamar Jackson's playoffs. Lamar Jackson's ability in the playoffs. It's like last year they lost to the Chiefs because of I forget who it was diving for the end zone. They punched it out last minute. That was the difference in that game.
Zay Flowers, right?
Yes. So to chalk it up to Lamar, I don't know if that's fair. And then if I recall correctly, 2 years ago it was Huntley starting in the playoffs, right? Because Lamar was injured.
Pro Bowler. Yes. Pro Bowler.
Great, and I have that in my notes here. They lost Tyler Huntley, and when you have a guy like Lamar Jackson, who I understand he's a second-string quarterback, might not be that big of a deal, but you have a guy like Lamar who's more likely to get injured because of the style of football that he plays. That loss of Tyler Huntley ends up mattering more than if it was just a pocket passer.
Yeah.
So I kind of agree with the sentiment that everybody's kind of giving here. I don't think the Ravens are going to be as good as last year. Speaking of Mike McDonald, as a Michigan fan, I can speak to his significance. He established what Michigan's defensive identity is right now. And then he went to the professional level, and he did a similar thing. So for me, losing him means a little bit more because he has that track record across both college and pro of establishing top-notch defenses. We touched on Jadeveon Clowney. He was their top pass rusher last year. Lose him. Lose Patrick Queen.
Panther.
Which makes zero sense, but anyway.
What do you mean it makes it? That's NFC South.
Yeah.
Keep pounding, baby.
I'm not too enthused with what the Ravens did this offseason. I mean, they got Derrick Henry. That's obviously a big pickup, but he's kind of getting old. I wasn't completely hurt when he left the Titans. Yeah. And it's going to be interesting. The schedule's tough at Dallas, at Kansas City. I'm looking at weeks, where are we at? 3 to 5. That's a tough stretch. At Dallas, Buffalo, Sunday Night Football, at Cincinnati.
Dylan, read the first 5 games.
First 5 for Baltimore?
Yeah.
At Kansas City, Thursday Night Football. Home Raiders, at Dallas. Home Buffalo, Sunday Night Football, at Cincinnati.
That's realistic. There's a real world. That's 1-4.
And that's not crazy. That isn't crazy.
And if you look at their schedule, there is an argument to be made. They're playing, outside of Lamar, the top 6 other quarterbacks in the league. Burrow twice, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Hurts, Herbert, Stroud. Sorry, Dylan. But that's arguably the top 6 quarterbacks outside of Lamar. So, I don't know. It just speaks to the point. If they come out of that 1-4, what are we doing here? Is it we call people's head?
If they come out 1-4, I'm head to FanDuel and I'm placing Ravens live season win total.
Exactly.
Agreed.
Oh, sure.
Agreed.
Yeah, sure.
For sure.
They're gonna turn it around.
And something to kind of like add on to it. This is going backwards a little bit, but like I think it's kind of unfair to put the playoff losses, like what Dylan said, on Lamar, especially when he was hurt 2 years ago. And then last year it was like that Zay Flowers fumble killed them.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I'll be interested to see.
But with that, I agree there. I 100% agree. But he has struggled in these playoff games. Let's not pretend he played very well in these playoff games.
I just wanted to add some context.
Yeah, but he has dropped off in the playoffs year after year. And also, I agree with you guys. Like, it's definitely not all on Lamar. Like, the NFL playoffs are a lot of luck is involved in the NFL playoffs. Like, there's a lot of no rhyme or reason to things. Joe Flacco has a Super Bowl.
We have this conversation, I feel like, every year. We have to remember only one team can win the Super Bowl. So if we're going to sit here and trash Dallas for losing in the – like, there's plenty of talent. I understand we're not talking about Dallas, but, Lamar, Baltimore's a great example too. Only one team can win, and there is Patrick Mahomes.
But also, at the same time, they're not doing well in the other games of the playoffs. It's not like they're making the AFC Championship every year, or they're making the Super Bowl is the thing.
They did make the AFC Championship last year, right? Was that when they played Kansas City?
I believe so. But that's what I'm saying. Like they're not they're not making it every year is what I'm saying.
But then the year before they had a backup quarterback.
Okay,
so it's like the last 2 years.
The year before they choke.
I'll add something. I do think, though, I think one of my concerns about the Ravens is I thought they were so good last year.
Yeah.
And you just got to go, look, they're still really good this year. We're kind of critiquing them and nitpicking here and there and being like, the schedule's hard. I think we all think they're still very good. It's just sort of in your mind, you kind of have to go, was last year the chance, though?
Yes.
You had Mike
100%.
McDonald. I think last year was but sometimes, right? They could be not as good this year and win the Super Bowl. And sometimes that's just how it happens. Because the Chiefs last year, I don't think the Chiefs were that good last year. They struggled for large. That's not the best Chiefs team. There have been better Chiefs teams that haven't won the Super Bowl. Sometimes that's how the cookie crumbles in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. But, I do think it's fair to be a little cautious with the Ravens when you have the losses that you have, which aren't major, but you look at this team, you're like, look, it's still really good, but it's not as good as last year, and they didn't make the Super Bowl last year, and they probably should have, and that hurts. But I think you got to give the Ravens some credit. Harbaugh, the front office, they give themselves a chance to knock on that door every year. They haven't gotten in the door, but they just they're knocking. They're knocking every year. As long as you have Lamar, you've got a shot.
And that's what I've been saying. I don't want it to sound like I'm poo-pooing the Ravens. They're a great team. They're going to win 10 to 12 games. Every Ravens fan is going to agree with this. No one cares. Win in the playoffs. That's all that matters. We're done. We're done. It's cute to win 10, 11 games. That's fun. Yeah, you're in the mix. You're a good team. Win in the playoffs. That's all Ravens fans care about. Let's move on. We talked enough about the Ravens. Let's move on to the Bengals. Their win total's 10.5 wins right now. They're plus 165, I see, on FanDuel to win the AFC North. The Bengals, very interesting. There's a lot of, if you listen to previews so far this season, Dylan, I know you're going to be looking at this. Every person talks about, okay, there's always a team that goes worst to first. Worst to first.
Yeah.
The Bengals are everybody's they're the clear team to go worst to first. If Burrow can stay healthy, how is this team not winning the AFC North? So do you agree that the Bengals are going to finish first in the AFC North and be that team that accomplishes that?
No. But I will say I can't blame anybody for thinking that, because when the last place team in your division's 9-8 with a backup quarterback for half of the season, that's not an unreasonable conclusion to come to. My problem is in the hump that I'm trying to get over. I've been in on the Bengals the last 2 years. We do these previews, and I think
you said 16-1 or 15-2 last year.
I would not doubt that coming from me, right? The Wilkerson ratings, we had a very interesting time last year with that, but I've been high on them. FanDuel always does that. Bet $50 for a team to win the Super Bowl. Get $5 bonus bet for every game they win. I always do the Bengals. At this point, I think we have to have a serious conversation about Joe Burrow staying healthy. because that has seemed to get us in trouble multiple times now. And the fact that they were able to stay 9-8 with Browning at quarterback is impressive. And if they had Burrow, who knows what this Bengals team would have done last year. The defense last year, man. I did not realize how bad this defense was last year. And I don't really see much that they do to address. I mean, they signed Von Bell. Maybe that's it. I think offensively, signing Mike Gesicki. I'm a big Gesicki guy. I think he's a good addition at tight end. But lose Joe Mixon, lose Tyler Boyd.
Real quick, I don't think losing Joe Mixon is that big of a deal.
No,
Let's be honest.
I agree.
When you look who replaces him, though, I mean, do we trust Chase Brown or Zach Moss that much? I don't think I do.
I just don't think. I think Joe Mixon. Does he really elevate the Bengals? I really don't think there's going to be that big of a drop off.
He's consistent.
Even when Chase Brown would play, he was pretty good last season.
Limited action.
Good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Limited action, exactly. That's fair.
I don't know if the Joe Mixon loss really ends up meaning too much. I think you can make that argument for a lot of running backs in the league. That's a whole different conversation. But looking at the schedule, the Bengals go, let's see, at Kansas City, at Dallas isn't easy. No one wants to play in Nashville.
Well,
so the schedule's
to play in Nashville.
the schedule's easier than the Ravens, right? I think what it comes down to me is that this defense allowed the most yards per play. They allowed the highest average distance of throw. So like teams were going over top of these guys. Can Joe Burrow stay healthy? I think that's what it comes down to. And if they can, I think that this team can win the division. If he doesn't, I don't know. But I do think we have to start asking that question.
I'm all the way back on the Bengals this year. I think 13 wins is highly probable, maybe even 14. Dylan, you mentioned the defense. I'll start there. Yeah, they were terrible last year. They really can't get much worse. And if you look at the schedule, they go from the hardest schedule to the sixth easiest. Look at the young quarterbacks they play. Drake May, maybe, if he starts. Jaden Daniels, Bryce Young, Aiden O'Connell, Will Levis, probably Bo Nix.
Super Bowl MVP Bryce Young.
But still, the defense is not more of like, oh, they signed all these guys to get better, blah, blah, blah. It's the schedule. May, Daniels, Young, O'Connell, Levis, Bo Nix. Those are 6 young guys and have very limited action so far, very unproven, as much as I hate to say that about Bryce Young. I think the defense will be a lot better this year, just because of that alone.
I also want to add that something I didn't mention positively for the Bengals. This is the only team that has consistently figured out how to beat the Chiefs. The only team in NFL that for some reason, they always have their number. I think they lost last year, but the past 3 years they've had their number. And that means a lot when you have them on the schedule, and it also means a lot when you're probably going to face them in the playoffs.
The Bengals and Jared Goff. But anyway.
Yeah. And it feels like cheating. It feels like cheating to be like, oh, the Bengals are going to be my worst to first pick because, like you said, they were 9-8. So like if I'm picking a team over 500 for that, it feels like I'm cutting corners a little bit. But I do think they'll win the division. And my only concern, like you said, Dylan, Joe Burrow's health. He's had a major injury every year of his career so far. And I saw something a couple weeks ago that I didn't even know. Apparently that wrist surgery was pretty rare that he got. And if it went wrong, he could have like lost mobility in his wrist and like not been able to use it or something. Like there was a big risk that nobody really talked about. I don't know. The O-line's been terrible. They've been 27th or worse in the last 4 years in pass block win rate. If they can just get him a little bit better protection, I'd like the Bengals this year. And I do think Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, as much drama is with the contracts and T. Higgins is begrudgingly playing on the franchise tag and Jamar Chase isn't showing up to camp, I think it works itself out. I think they're talented enough. They could show up week 1 with no prep and still be good enough to compete in this league. So I love the Bengals this year. I think they're my pick to win the division.
You know what's so impressive about this team is that you go, yeah, like the offensive line, like, they've struggled. Oh, the defense, they've struggled. Like, I don't love the running back room, but it's like they have had success and made a Super Bowl and made an AFC championship and nearly went to another Super Bowl, like literally just because they have Joe Burrow and then like great receivers. It's impressive. And also like we talked about like the worst to first. You know why there's a worst to first every year? Because they get to play a 4th place schedule. And I think that makes a massive difference
Great point.
with the Bengals and the Ravens, where it's like, I'm not sure. Like, if you're asking me, do you think the Bengals are better than the Ravens? Like, I don't know. I don't think so. I think the Ravens are a better team, but I think the Bengals are going to win the division just because the schedules matter. And I think that really matters. So I'm also agreeing that the Bengals are going to win this division. With that being said, I still think the Ravens are a better team. And I do wonder if the Ravens kind of like, I mean, we're past the Ravens, but like, if that almost helps them, that they're like a 10-7 wild card team opposed to like a 12-5
Expectations,
division
they
winner.
can't handle it.
Yeah, like it's almost like they've dropped off, so maybe they've got a better chance this year. But I also like the Bengals to win the division. But I just thought I'd insert the caveat of the schedule being the reason why, and I'm not sure that means they're the best team in the division.
I agree. I'm 100% with you, Ben. That's what I was going to point out. That schedule really matters. You get to play Carolina, you get to play New England, you get to play Tennessee. That matters. They're going to win. They're probably going 3-0 in these games. But I also agree with Dylan.
Vegas.
I think we have to ask the question about Joe Burrow staying healthy. That is what matters. When we talked about Kansas in our Big 12 preview, go check that out. We talked about, can Jalen Daniels stay healthy? All that matters is Joe Burrow staying healthy. That's all that matters. I'm not so bullish. I'm not willing to put my money down that Joe Burrow's going to stay healthy, but I am going to pick the Bengals to win the AFC North. I am going to pick them to go over 10.5 wins, solely based on what Ben and Connor said. That schedule. The schedule's a cakewalk. The schedule. Now, every NFL game is difficult. No NFL game's technically a gimme. But when you have that easy of a schedule, things work out really well for you. Joe Burrow stays healthy, they're winning 11-plus games. But I also agree with Ben. I think overall, the Ravens are a more disciplined and a better football team, but the schedules don't line up perfectly for them. So I think the Bengals are going to, contingent on Joe Burrow staying healthy. Dylan.
You guys are all in on the Bengals winning the division. I just don't see it. I want to take a second to agree with what Ben said exactly about the schedule, because as I was going through this, it's just when you win the division, you're in the playoffs, you have more primetime games, and whether we want to admit it or not, it's just not an advantage. More Thursday night football, it really isn't. And you play the tougher teams. The NFL wants to get those. You want to see the Ravens play the Chiefs, right? You want to see a rematch of the AFC Championship. Ben, you hit the nail on the head right there, because I noticed that as I was going through. But I think what we have to consider with the Bengals, and maybe this is just data brain coming out, but if Joe Burrow starts the whole season, you have a baseline for how many wins you think they could have. I think 11 or 12 is fair. But then you have to factor in the probability of him getting injured. And let's say he does miss 3 games. I don't think it's crazy to say that's an extra loss or 2, depending on where that falls into play. Or let's say he misses half the season. So I'm not taking over 10.5 wins. I'm not taking them to win the division just because you factor in that probability of him getting injured, and it makes me really weary of their season-long performance. If you told me Joe Burrow's staying healthy, I would be on board with you guys.
But it's hard to do that in football, Dylan. Like, people are getting hit all the time. Like, yes, but is he a victim of circumstance? Is he a victim of these external factors where the offensive line's garbage, the run game's been mediocre, defense is terrible, there's all the pressure in the world on the offense to score? Is it Joe Burrow's fault that he's getting hit this much? Like, he's got to be due for a healthy season at some point.
Dylan's not saying it's Joe Burrow's fault, but it is a matter of circumstance where why should Dylan back Joe Burrow to stay healthy if the offensive line is terrible? And if we've seen over time, he can't stay healthy.
Why are we backing Lamar then? Lamar's been injured in crucial points of his career so far.
It didn't sound like anybody was.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Sound like we
Joe
were all
Burrow's
kind of
getting
like
all this flack.
No, I think I don't want to get too far into the weeds here, but let's talk about season-long passer props. You know, who was a good one last year? Joe Burrow. I took his under whatever. It was like 4,000 some passing yards, and you know he has an injury history. You could kind of just blindly take the under, hoping that he starts the first game. It's action, and then so it's kind of like the same thing. Is where if you think Joe Burrow is going to get injured, you could go ahead and take under 10.5 wins. But they won 9 with Browning last year, so it's really hard to tell. But I don't think they win the division.
I know who you think wins the division, but let's move on. Let's talk about the Browns. The Browns win totals 8.5 wins. Nick Chubb coming back from a brutal injury. Deshaun Watson, can he return to his former self? Let's just start there. That's the question with the Browns. I think the Browns have a really good team. I think they have a really good roster. 8.5 wins, 9 wins seems very realistic for the Browns, but that all matters is, can Deshaun Watson get back to where he was in Houston? I'll start with you, Connor. Can he?
No. Immediately no. But I don't know if they need him to. If he can be 80 to 85% of what he was on the Texans, I think this Browns roster is good enough to get double-digit wins this year. He doesn't have to go back to, 2017 Deshaun Watson, I'm diving in the end zone and I'm running a crazy good offense. They do have to figure it out between him and Stefanski. I think this is the make or break year for the duo of Deshaun Watson and Kevin Stefanski. If they don't figure it out, somebody's got to go. And I'm hesitant to say they'll let Deshaun Watson go because guess what? The most money guaranteed ever paid to a player. So it's never going to be his fault. He will be the last guy to take the blame, even if he deserves it all. I'm lukewarm on the Browns too. I don't know. I mean, Deshaun Watson, it is simple analysis. It really does hinge on him and how high of a level he can play at with this supporting cast.
Which I think I'm not saying I would be shocked if Deshaun Watson was good this season.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. He's also a sneaky bad health bet. That's another thing that. Go ahead, Dylan.
Well, I didn't want to cut you off, but
No, you're
I
good.
think exactly that, too. The same thing we were saying about Joe Burrow. It's like, is this guy going to stay healthy? I looked at the depth chart. Sneaky preview alert. I am slated for the Browns-Vikings preseason game for my Action Network article. Keep an eye out for that. But lots of red on that depth chart. O's, Q's. Like, are these guys going to be ready for the season? I mean, it was maybe a quarter of the roster, first stringers that had this. And, maybe it's a technicality. These
That's
guys
preseason.
don't. Yeah, sure. And we could always consider that. But when we talk about injuries, we're right about Deshaun Watson. Is he going to be able to stay healthy the whole year? I don't think we can understate the value that Jerry Jeudy brings to this offense. He was stuck in a system at Denver.
Talk about a health bet, though.
And that's completely fair. I think that reigns true throughout this whole Browns roster. Can the key guys stay healthy? The defense was great last year. I think we can expect more of the same. Zach Zinter, offensive lineman from Michigan. Keep an eye out for him. Great. He was a great offensive lineman at Michigan. Looking at the schedule, the away non-divisional games aren't that hard. At Las Vegas, at Washington, Philadelphia is going to be tough. At New Orleans, at Denver, and then the home ones, Dallas will be tough, Kansas City will be tough, Miami will be tough. But this is another schedule that it doesn't pop out to me and is like, it's going to be very difficult.
It's the third hardest schedule projected right now in the whole league.
What, can you tell me which ones of those games you're scared about?
All of them, every division game, especially for Cleveland.
Well, sure, division, but like we said, I'm assuming 3-3. I'm assuming 3-3 for every team in this division.
Fair.
So,
okay.
And then I just think it comes down to health. They do have a tough. I mean, they end the year like weeks 11 through 18. That's kind of a brutal stretch, but I like the Browns. I do like them if they can stay healthy. It's just one of those things.
Go ahead, Ben.
I was going to say, I like him too. Also, I want to add, Nick Chubb isn't ready, right?
Right.
No, not yet.
Right.
Okay, but he's expected, or at least it's very possible he could be back at some point.
Yes.
You know who else
That's
is
the
out?
consensus?
Deonta Foreman's out. Naheem Hines is out. That's their top three backs. So all of a sudden, we like Jerome Ford again and Pierre Strong. Come on. I don't know about that either.
I like them in the trenches, though. They're tough, and it's a great defense. So, yeah, but I think the question is just offense with quarterback and playmakers at wide receiver and running back. So,
Also, I am okay with Jerome Ford, by the way. I want that on the record.
Are we? He wasn't awesome last year.
No,
He
I'm
had
saying
a ton of
I'm not
carries,
saying-
ton of volume.
I'm not saying he was awesome, but I'm not saying he's the worst running back in football. Bad.
I was reading reports that he was going to get cut before these guys got injured.
I'm not.
I don't know. I'm not all in on Jerome Ford.
I'm not fully out. I'm not fully out on Jerome Ford.
Okay.
I'm sprinkling that in there. I want to. We know what we saw in Houston, and maybe that person's gone in Deshaun. Maybe we'll never see that kind of Deshaun Watson ever again. It's just so hard for me to believe he can't even get to 80% of what he was. Because we're seeing someone who is 50% of what he was in Houston, if that, maybe even less. I want to believe that he can somewhat get back to that point, but it's really hard from what we've seen. He can't stay healthy. It looks like he just doesn't fit in that offense at all. He looks so uncomfortable out there. It's tough for me with the Browns, but once again, in the trenches, like Ben mentioned, 8-9 wins. This is how good this division is.
How much do we credit that year off, Carter? That year off from football. Is that why Deshaun Watson took a major step back? Or is he just naturally regressing?
Remember, whenever these dudes hold out, like Le'Veon Bell sits out for a year, he comes back, he looks like he's never played football. And that's kind of what happened with Deshaun Watson. Let me ask you guys this question. It's a little bit into the Steelers' point, too. Who's more likely to get back to their former selves, Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson? Dylan?
Russell Wilson, 100%. Russell Wilson will be an MVP candidate this year.
It's Deshaun
That's
Watson.
the dumbest. No.
Oh.
he will. No.
He might
Russell-
not even start. He might not even
He's
win the
gonna
starting
start.
job.
You're on Ohio
For
State.
what, 4
Twitter.
weeks?
You're on Ohio State X if you're thinking that Justin Fields is going to be starting for the Steelers week 1. Absolutely.
Okay,
Week
I
5?
don't
Week 5?
I don't even really want to entertain that. But I'll just say Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson's way more likely to get back to their former selves.
Why?
When was the last time Russell Wilson was an elite quarterback?
10
When
years
he had-
ago.
When he had a stable head coach at a stable system in Seattle. That is when he was elite. That's as
6
simple
years
as that.
ago?
More than
How long has he been at Denver? He's been at Denver 2 years. He was
wasn't
fine in Seattle.
Yeah, but he was fine at the last couple of years of Seattle. I think in the last year of Seattle, right? Am I wrong, or was he hurt like half the year too? It's like he kind of was. He was kind of at the end of Seattle. He was like
My answer, Carter. Deshaun Watson for sure. Starting right tackle Jack Conklin played 22 snaps last year. He's back. The weapons are a lot better than Russell Wilson's weapons. I think considerably better. I think Deshaun Watson's the answer here. They are, Dylan.
I don't
They
think.
are.
I don't know about that.
If
I
Nick
think
Chubb
you.
comes
I'm not
back and
going
he's- Go ahead.
I'm not going to push back on that too much. You might be right there, but
Okay.
I don't know. I think what if Deshaun Watson makes this resurgence? What are you basing it off of? Just he's going to be back? Like with Russell Wilson, you can at least give him the credit that he was successful under an established regime.
But
And then
I
he
would
goes.
I would say age. I think age is a huge part of this.
I think that's fair. And I want to address something real quick. We talked about the drop off at Seattle. In 2020, he posted above 90 PFF rating. So like,
Okay, but just go on.
well, I think what I'm trying to get at here is you have Deshaun Watson, who, if you say he's going to make this resurgence, it's just based on some voodoo magic that's in the air. Russell Wilson, you can
Returning.
you can you can at least point to Russell Wilson and say he succeeded when he had an established head coach at an established program, and then he comes into Denver. You have Vic Fangio, who new system, gets fired in the middle of the year. Then you have Sean Payton, who made it pretty publicly clear he didn't even want Russell there in the first place. And now you get to go to Pittsburgh under Mike Tomlin, who's been at Pittsburgh for years. And you can make the argument, yeah, maybe it's new to Russell, right? It's a new thing to him, but at least the system has been there. And that's what he had at Seattle. And that's when you saw him at his best.
Okay, but the system's been there, but have quarterbacks been successful in Pittsburgh?
I was going to say
Who's
that.
been there?
I was
Who's
going to
been
say
there?
that.
Kenny Pickett? He made
Okay,
Ben
but-
Roethlisberger a star.
Mitchell Trubisky, buddy. Learn
Mitchell
Tar Heel
Trubisky,
football.
Mason
But
Rudolph,
then-
that's
But like I feel like it's unfair to say, well, Pittsburgh's actually good at developing and having like good quarterbacks and good offenses. They just never go out and get it. It's almost like if I just made no effort towards something and then just said, but like I can be good at that, but I don't like try to be good at it.
And Dylan,
You
your
know, that's what it
argument-
feels like the
yeah.
Steelers and their offenses. I don't know.
Dylan's argument with the system, it's like, if that's true, then these quarterbacks in Pittsburgh the last few years, not great. They should have overperformed. If it's such a great system and Tomlin's awesome, they should have gotten more out of these quarterbacks, which I guess they've been 500, so sure, maybe. But like,
Yeah.
nothing about Russell Wilson screams elite, going to come into the system and dominate and win the
And
division.
Tomlin's an awesome coach. Like, I'm not gonna like discredit that. But like, if the Steelers are good this year, it's gonna be because Russell Wilson is just not bad, and he's just okay, and the defense is really good, and they're able to like run the. I don't know. I don't see some resurgence with Russell Wilson. Like, I think he can be better. But like, I just think the really good Russell Wilson it's just the past at this point.
even if you think he's going to be better, he graded out at around 77, 78 last year, right? And that was under an awful Denver situation. Even if you think he's going to be a little bit better, he is still probably statistically top 12, top 10 quarterback.
10?
Even if you think he's going to be,
10 is
even if
pushing
you
it.
think he's going to be a little
high.
bit better, he completion percentage over expected. He was like top 5 last year. So I hear what you're saying. Quarterbacks have not succeeded in this system since Ben, right? I don't think we can completely write off the lack of talent from the gentlemen that have held that position. I don't
Fair.
think, and we know that Russell has the talent. He had it, right? It's somewhere. We can say he had it. I think it's still there, and I think that coming into something, Mike Tomlin's Pittsburgh Steelers established never go under 500. I think that it will give him the opportunity to, I say regress back to what he was, but be a little bit better than what he was at Denver. And I think that's all that they need.
Also to that point, we're talking about the Steelers now. So I mean, you're already seeing it. If you're
Can I-
watching on YouTube
real
or Spotify, we've already switched to the Steelers essentially.
I do want to point out Russell Wilson had his highest run grade last season too at Denver. So if we want to say his mobility's gone or whatever because he's old, that's just not true.
He was sneaky good running the ball last year, I will say.
Thank you.
The other thing I will say to Dylan's point, I don't know if there's a better coach in the NFL that can deal with weird personalities than Mike Tomlin. Because clearly Russell Wilson...
CT ESPN.
Yeah, clearly Russell Wilson did not fit in Denver with Sean Payton and those guys. Clearly Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson and the Seahawks were like, get this guy out of here. We can't stand him anymore. Look what Mike Tomlin has dealt with over the years. And those guys were super successful. Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, those guys were super successful under Mike Tomlin. I think if there's going to be a guy that can get that Russell Wilson resurgence, it's going to be Mike Tomlin.
Can I do the schedule thing real quick? I got to do the schedule thing.
Can we do it? Because I'm going to rebuttal as soon as you do it.
Okay, fine. Divisional
Okay.
games, 3-3. Like I said,
No,
I think
not 3-3.
I think 3-3 is fair.
2-4. 2-4.
Keep going. Maybe 2-4. Maybe.
Okay, whatever. Look at their outside of the division. At Atlanta is going to be tough. I'm pretty high on the Falcons. I'm at Philadelphia will be tough, and then
Colts are tough.
They host the Cowboys. They're
Colts
not
is
bad.
not an easy out. That is
No,
not
no.
a gimme in any way.
Sure, not a gimme. I would say that it's not a gimme,
The
but I don't.
Jets might be tough.
Jets aren't. We'll
No,
talk about
they're
that.
never tough.
Okay.
Anyways.
We'll talk about that one on another preview, but I'm
But
not
the
buying
Jets
into
could
that
be
either.
tough.
Can I
They
rebuttal
could
on the
be,
schedule?
but
Or are you still going?
well, home
Continue.
KC. So four games there that pose
tough.
a semblance of a challenge. That's
You
10
can't
and
be
7.
serious. You can't be
I was about to
serious.
say,
You
I
cannot
don't-
be serious.
I was about to say, I don't think there's a gimme win on the schedule technically.
That was my next point. Which game are they actually favored in? What is a surefire 100% game they're favored in? I don't see one. I see Las Vegas, I see the Giants, and that's it. Maybe the Commanders, but that's
Commanders.
three out of 17. That's it. Maybe at Cleveland.
I'm not gonna lie. I looked at this Pittsburgh team before I went into it with the preconceived notion. I think the Steelers stink, right? Like I just thought that went into it. Went okay. I don't hate them as much as I thought I did, and then looked at the schedule and go, I'm back to square one.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what you guys are talking about
Dylan,
with the
but
schedule.
the-
I don't think it's that bad. The end of the
it's-
year is tough,
It's
but
the toughest strength of schedule projected. If there's a ranking out there that's like projected strength of schedule, they are number one.
Connor, can I? Well, we all know that stays
It's the
consistent
division.
throughout the course.
It's the
of
division too.
football
I know
year.
it's
Yeah.
the division. Yeah.
Connor, I want to address something. You do know that the favorites don't always win, right?
Oh, I'm very aware.
Okay,
But in
all
this
right. I just
case,
wanna make sure.
I think the Steelers are significantly inferior. If they're only favored in 2 or 3 games, how many more of those games are they actually going to win? 3 or 4? They're still at 6 wins then.
And are they going to win all the ones they're favored in?
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
you never know.
The Commanders aren't going to be a pushover.
And Dylan, to your point, we can talk. This can just be a discussion as a whole. How much do we put into Mike Tomlin never having a losing record? How much do we put into that?
It's
think-
like
Go ahead,
it's
Dylan.
the
Go
only
ahead.
thing. Oh, sorry, Dylan.
That's okay. I think that it's at some point you have to give a good coach credit and just chalk it up to that. We do it with Saban. We did it with Saban. We did it with Belichick. We do it with these good coaches, and I think that needs to be chalked up to Tomlin.
Okay, Ben.
I think it's considered. It's the only thing making me think the Steelers don't go
fair.
below 500.
That's fair.
It's like, but I'm still like, I know Mike Tomlin doesn't go under 500. I always expect him to go under 500. I'm going to do it again with the caveat that, like, I think the Steelers finish 4th in this division. They're the worst team and have probably the hardest schedule, if not the second hardest schedule. So but I always have the caveat they could win 8-9 games, but just because they're the Steelers and that's what they do. But they look like a 5-6 win team. They look like a 6-win team. I think they're like 6
maybe
and 11.
6, maybe 6.
Yeah.
Ooh,
yeah.
That's.
I'll say 6. I'll say 6.
I still think that's low for the Steelers. Like, we count the Steelers out every year. I've been burned by counting out the Steelers every year at that point. But I do agree with you guys. I think they are. If everybody stays healthy in this division, and that's what we're doing. We're not saying these guys are going to get hurt or not. If everybody in this division, every quarterback stays healthy, they are the worst team in this division. They are finishing 4th. But to Dylan's point, has the AFC – I mean, it's a curse being an AFC North quarterback going against these defenses. No one can stay healthy. You're going to see the backup quarterback at some point for all of these teams. Justin Fields is going to play at some point this season.
Well, back to your original question, Carter, about Mike Tomlin. I think it's becoming a little bit overblown. Steelers were 9-2 in one-possession games last year, 34-11 since 2020. Like, are we just going to chalk that up to the Black Magic Steelers? They faced seven backup quarterbacks. They faced 7 backup quarterbacks last year after week 9. 7 backup quarterbacks. That's not going to happen again.
But that's because
what?
4 of those games were probably because they were interdivision. They play them twice. You're talking Jake Browning and Joe Flacco. Like, those aren't just crappy second-string quarterbacks.
Well, Joe Flacco comeback player of the year.
Yeah,
exactly. That's
no. I'm saying, Dylan, there's too much. Dylan, you love the luck rankings. You love them. By a mile, Pittsburgh was number 1 last year, almost 18%. Number 2 is the Eagles, like 5% behind them. Pittsburgh by a mile. Most turnovers, played backup quarterbacks. Everything fell into place, and they still went 9-8. And yes, Russell Wilson's better than Kenny Pickett or Justin Fields, whoever you want to say. Everybody else is better too. I think the division's going to be healthy. Burrow's going to be back. This is hands down the worst team in the division, and I think they win 5 games.
I need it on the record. I don't think that you can carry luck rankings over season to season.
Okay.
I think there's something to be said about that.
Let me ask you this. I believe 2 years ago, Vikings, going into previews last year, the Vikings finished, they won like 12 games 2 years ago. We knew that was lucky. We knew that wasn't going to hold up season to season. And then we saw them get burned last year.
Oh, well, they were missing their starting quarterback.
It wouldn't have mattered.
It wouldn't have mattered. Yes, it would have. Kirk Cousins versus Josh Dobbs and Jaron Hall. Yeah, that would have mattered.
Jaron Hall, good quarterback.
Well, BYU guy, of course. But
good quarterback.
I can't ascribe to that either. That Kirk Cousins Kirk Cousins led Vikings team last year makes the playoffs.
Dylan, let me ask you this. The Steelers have the worst offensive weapons in the AFC North, correct? It looks really rough.
Say yes. Say yes.
The receiver's bad. I'll give you that.
Not a fan of Najee Harris.
Nope.
You do get Michigan legend Roman Wilson, who will probably start. He's a stud. And then
ran 4.3.
I agree.
I do think. Well, we all know it's not just about speed. I think that the running back room is one of the best. Harrison and Jalen Warren. You can faceplant all you want. They were 13th and 14th highest rated via PFF. And
I know what the numbers say, but when you watch Najee Harris play, do you have any confidence he's going to bust off a run?
Now you're one of those guys.
I will never forget that one tweet that said that Najee Harris looks like he's running in jeans.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that, and I just can't. That ruined. There was no coming back. Najee Harris can't come back from me seeing that tweet. As stupid as that is, I just can't see it after. I saw that and I said, that's so true. I'm done.
I think with these two running backs, it doesn't allow defenses. They can't take a break off of the run game. It's either Harris or Warren, and both of them are competent. I think that's what it comes down to. So I'm high on this Steelers team. I'm very high. I think Wilson has a top-notch year, MVP caliber year. And I hate it on Justin Fields because he's an Ohio State guy. But this is another situation, competent backup. Like, I wouldn't, if I'm a Steelers fan, I don't hate Justin Fields being our backup.
He's probably the best backup in the league.
No, I don't know. I don't know about that.
I would agree.
He's good.
Best back. So just say it. You have the Steelers winning this division, don't you?
I have two I go back and forth on.
Pick one.
Yeah, I go Steelers. Steelers win
crazy.
the AFC North.
Can I,
That's crazy.
Dylan? Can I throw you a little Russell Wilson, little Russell Wilson thing here?
Yeah,
So
sure. Throw
you
him.
think he's going to be great this year, right?
Yeah, Mr.
I think he's
Unlimited.
going to have every opportunity to be great. Arthur Smith in Atlanta last year. Here's a stat for you: top 5 in rate of throws that traveled 5+ air yards. They chucked it deep last year a lot. Russell Wilson loves to throw the deep ball. 8th among quarterbacks in 20+ yard throws last year. I don't know if I trust him to actually complete those throws to the weapons. He loves to throw them. Arthur Smith's going to let him air it out. Who's catching it? George Pickens is great. After that, Calvin Austin, Pat Freiermuth for 4 yards.
Freiermuth, yeah. Roman Wilson.
Van Jefferson, not very reliable.
I did on my notes. I have Van Jefferson. Yikes.
I know. you
Yeah,
see him on
exactly.
the depth chart, and you're like,
Yeah.
But they
It's
have
like that
Roman
free agent
Wilson.
you sign every year.
I'm thoroughly disappointed with how much we've talked about the Steelers. Like I'm
Last thing then, I have another point. Dylan will love this.
Okay.
November 17th through Christmas, 7 games in 38 days. That's 1 game every 5.5 days.
The end of the
That
schedule
is a
tough.
brutal stretch.
And not
I
against
don't know.
easy
I
teams.
can't get past it. I can't get past it.
Yeah, I mean everyone has a brutal stretch at some point. I feel like maybe outside the Bengals they have a nicer schedule. But real quick before we get out of here, let's wrap up here. Everyone give their division winner. Dylan,
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Ben,
Bengals.
Connor.
Cincinnati Bengals.
We got the Bengals as well. Favorite bet in the division. Real quick, Dylan.
Ravens under 10.5 wins.
Ben. Connor.
I'm gonna go with
Oh.
what's Cleveland at? Sorry,
8.5.
I'll go Cleveland over at 9. They'll win 9 games.
I like
I don't
that.
hate that. Connor.
I'm going to go Steelers under 8.5. Freest money you can have this year. It's time to fade Mike Tomlin. The streak ends this year. 20 straight seasons without a losing record. 1 off the NFL record. It ends this year. It ends this year.
It does end this year. I agree with you. I think it ends
I agree
this year.
too.
I think they win 7 games.
I love it,
Steelers
boys. I
fans are-
love it.
Steelers fans are going to hate that.
Not even 7.
I think this is the year that Mike Tomlin finally has a losing record.
I think 7 is the perfect I think they're not very good, but I also am giving respect to Tomlin. Like that's like the perfect happy middle. Because I want to say 5 or 6. They usually go 8 or 9. I feel like 7 is right if you're fading Tomlin in an appropriate, moderate way.
It's been 35 years since they finished last in this division. That ends this year. We're ending all the streaks this year. Their last 8 games, Dylan, every single division game is from week 11 onward. That is just too much for me. It's too much for me. I can't do it.
I can't wait for that Shefty bomb today. Brandon Ayuk signed max deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah.
And that wouldn't even change that much of my analysis. I'll give them one more win. Maybe they'll win 6.
You guys, I tell you, this is going to be fun. This is
love
going
it.
to be fun.
All right. I love it. I love it. Brandon Ayuk would change my win total. It really would for the Steelers.
What's your best bet, Carter? On the spot.
He said Steelers under.
No. I said I like the Steelers under,
okay.
but I'll go Bengals over 10.5 wins.
All right, 4 different teams there. I like it.
I'll go Bengals over 10.5 wins. We'll get the graphic ready. All right, that does it from us. Make sure to tune into all the other NFL divisional previews, all the college football previews. Follow us all on Twitter. It's all in the episode description below. At CarterCast on everything. Download SeatGeek. Use code CarterCast. $20 off your first purchase. Make sure to like and subscribe on the YouTube. Hit that like and subscribe button. Spotify, Apple, you know it. Go subscribe, rate, review. Thank you guys so much. We'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye.